Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and we are back talking about Fear the Walking Dead. Now, last night on our live stream, I did discuss a few things that I will likely repeat in this video, especially when it comes to the cheap tricks. I feel Fear the Walking Dead has just forced down the fan base's throat, down their eyeballs when they're trying to just enjoy a show and a story. There's three really hard-hitting problems with the series overall, especially in its current state. One is the cheap tricks. Again, I talked a little bit about that previously, and that is hurting the series even more recently. Another is repetition, which we have another huge problem with repetition. And I'm not even talking about the Rick rip-off cliffhanger in Season 9. Rick was injured, thrown off his horse, got impaled, and then walkers were, within a few feet of eating him. The next episode, he was able to get himself out of that, and you guys know how that went down. Well, in Fear, Season 5, the finale, we had Morgan shot, and he was left walkers inches away from eating him. I personally think this was probably left the way it was for one of two reasons. Well, one is a cheap trick, but one of two reasons. Either the actor is unsure about returning or how much of the new season he would be a part of. Maybe it would start off and he would be dead, or maybe it would start off and he'd only be in an episode, or maybe he'd be in the full season. And the other reason I think they put the cliffhanger in there is because they simply didn't have a good enough ending, so they just threw in a cheap cliffhanger. And again, it goes back to that repetition. And the cliffhanger overshadowed some of the repetition I don't think fans are even thinking about at the moment. The third big problem, and then we'll get back to the repetition, is the two showrunners, or the writers, whoever's in charge and in control of the story and the direction the story's going. They are just simply not the right fit. We've been seeing some fans say, okay, they better step it up and learn from their lessons. We will see from what they say. They are not learning from their mistakes. They're not listening to the fan base. They are very stubborn, hard-headed. Maybe they're insecure about their position or about job security. I don't know, but they had the worst response possible outside of, oh, shut up fans. So, yes, cheap tricks, repetition. Repetition has been something that's plagued Fear the Walking Dead and the Walking Dead franchise on a whole. Whether it's video games, spin-offs, repetition has been a big problem. And I don't think that's an accident. Part of me thinks it's on purpose. There's no way. When you sit down to write a zombie show, one of the first things I think you would want to do is, okay, what is something new and fresh that we can give the viewer base and really shake it up and show them like, wow, this is The Walking Dead, but holy shit, this feels so different, meaning the stories and the directions, but it still is grounded in that universe. But no, we get a lot of the same stuff. I break down a lot of over the course of reviewing the series. I've broken down a lot of the repetition, and it is more frequent than you realize when you start looking at it. So again, cheap tricks, repetition, and it's not a right fit. Now, the big repetition that everyone didn't pay attention to because you were so focused on Morgan is right here. This is from The Insider. I'll pull this up just to give you an example. It says, these things really do come to a head when they are when they're opposite each other at the end of the episode. But I think the interesting thing about that moment, is she shoots Morgan and hits him in the shoulder, and then she's got the gun to his face, and she has that line where she says, I just resent your face so much. And that speaks to some more stuff that's going on beneath the surface for Ginny. Perhaps there's something about her that Morgan, that pushes her buttons in the wrong way on a personal level. Here's where it gets repetitive. And we'll learn more about her in Season 6 as we see all our characters kind of living under her rule in these very settlements. All we're getting is Negan again the version of Negan and the Saviors, but with a little slight different twist. And that's been plaguing the Walking Dead franchise for so long. I don't know why these writers are doing it. Again, part of me speculates they go, okay, you know, they're not confident in coming up with fresh new material. They don't know how fans would react to it, so they start looking for stuff that fans have reacted well to. Negan and the Saviors in the comic, portions of the Negan and the Savior storyline in the TV show, other stuff that we've pointed out that was repetitive, but let's focus on this particular thing. So they take that idea and then they put their own little spin on it. Okay, they're not like Negan, but they kind of look like the Highwaymen from season 9 of The Walking Dead. Ginny's a girl, not a guy. She doesn't line them up. She has this, you know, similar aspect of what she's building in the future, blah, 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 keeping her people safe. And then with the settlements, instead of it just being Daryl, instead of one of them being taken, one of them was left behind and wounded, and they took all of them. So it was like this little flip or reverse. Instead of Abe and Glenn being, you know, killed, put out of their misery, and then taking Daryl, having him prisoner, and then having everyone go back to their houses, and then ruling over them from a distance. It's the same idea, it's the same concept, but tweaked enough to where if you didn't think about it, or maybe you were focused on something else, you might not realize you're just getting the same shit they've already done with Negan. Anyhow, so if you scroll up on pretty much anything, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, fans are not happy. Before we go into the showrunners and what they thought about the fan backlash, let's just take a look at this. Fear the Walking Dead, 73% for the critic score, 55% for the audience score. Let's see, episode 1 started out strong with 92%. Now here's a very important thing to keep in mind. The earlier episodes, there's a lot of leniency when people are reviewing them because it's setting up stuff that will be paid off later. That's why the earlier episodes as a whole, when you look at them, a lot of them will fall because the setups in these episodes literally mount to next to nothing enjoyable. There's barely any substance there. So episode 2, we drop immediately down to a 62. We come back up for episode 3 with an 83. We go back down to 75 for episode 4. We go down again to 64 for episode 5. Episode 6 drops to 42, then 36 for episode 7. We go up a little bit to 54 for episode 8. Up a little more to 64 for episode 9. Back down to 50 for episode 10. Back down more to 46 for episode 11. Back down again to 36 for 12. Here's a shocker. Episode 13. Now, this one I did not watch at all. And I'm actually curious to kind of check this one out to see why critics love this one so much. But this one got a 93. So out of nowhere, they had a really solid episode. And it got me curious. Because I did hear from people that episode 13 was one of their favorites this season. Now, episode 14 goes back down to the 50. Episode 15 plummets down to 17%. Only goes up a little bit to 23% for episode 16. The finale, 23, 17. Now, why it's so important is because these are your major payoffs concluding the story arc for this season, concluding the main story arc and setting up what's to come. What's to come? A different variation of Negan and the Saviors, essentially. And don't give me that there's enough differences bullshit, because they're not. You're just in denial. Now here we have the showrunners, and this is coming from Kirsten on Twitter, and she works for Insider, I believe, if I have that right. But they talk about how they don't feel like they were pressured putting stuff from the Walking Dead universe, like crossover characters and storylines that were in the original show onto Fear the Walking Dead. Now, when asked about the backlash, here's what one of the showrunners said. Chambliss, whatever his name is. You know, we told the story that we believe in. We are proud of what we did, and in terms of going forward, the show is changing, and that's always been a part of the plan. And now here's the red flag. You know, it changes every season, and every half season. Right here, he's screaming, please, guys, it'll be different next season, without admitting, okay, maybe this didn't go over so well. And we are really excited about the direction it's going and a lot of the tough challenges that our characters ahead are going to be facing. You might as well have just said, you know what? I'm not even going to try to answer that question. Can we just move on to the next one? Let's move on to the next question. What would your next question be? And about grading themselves, I guess she said, you guys are killing me. You know what? I'm going to step back a little and ask you, I'm looking at the season overall. What grade would you guys give yourselves for this season? I wonder if that is coming from the last comment. Well, you know, we're tough on ourselves, so I don't know if we would necessarily assign a grade. That's because they know they would get ripped to shreds if they do. Let's be real. But, you know, I think what excited us about this season was the opportunity to see people navigate the apocalypse in a completely different way. In what way was this? What way was completely different? Maybe I missed it, but you guys let me know what was completely different. You know, by its very nature of the apocalypse, often, you know, whether in the Walking Dead universe or the apocalypse that's been explored in other TV scapes, it's a very bleak, nihilistic place, and certainly we've seen some of that over the course of the season. Wait, is that it? I thought there was more. I really thought there was more to that one. Oh, yikes. Just yikes. So if you want to go, I will leave this link in the video description. I'll try to remember to pop it in the first comment. If you want to go here to Insider and read this whole article, definitely go for it. You know, Virginia shoots Morgan in the shoulder, and that was something that I wanted to clear up because I'm sure fans will be asking. You know, listen, he was bleeding quite a bit from that wound, and he also had walkers encroaching on him. So, you know, whether it's in the shoulder or the heart, it's a bad gunshot wound, and it's not going to be one that he could easily survive. But he's probably gonna, right? I mean, most likely, definitely gonna. Because what would be the point of Morgan's arc? Think about his arc. What would be the point? I think we'll say is Morgan's final message to everyone was telling them to just live, and he meant that. He meant that on, I think, a more metaphysical level. No, I'm sorry, metaphorical level, telling them to try to live their lives because there actually was some validity to what they were doing. But for Morgan, the question is whether or not he's going to be able to take his own advice and literally live 30 seconds past when the camera cuts in the final shot. And that's just something people are going to have to wait and see. Here's one thing I wanted to make sure I didn't miss because this is frustrating. This is just asinine. It's a metaphorical level, right? But for Morgan, the question is he going to be able to take his own advice? This isn't something where it's like, here, take advice that can... You got a bullet wound, you're bleeding profusely, you're alone, supposedly, and walkers are inches away from you, and you're on the ground. Sure, can you just, like, do a duck and roll and get in the door and close the door and knock a walker down and then get up and get a... second burst of power and run away or some shit like that? Probably. But how is he going to take his own advice? Bleeding out. The absurdity in some of these answers. So ridiculous. So stupid. It's unreal. Now, again, to close out with the three biggest issues, and I repeated this in the, I said this in the live stream the other night, but three big huge problems: cheap tricks, repetition, and not a right fit. Now if they're keeping the showrunners, there's nothing they can do about not a right fit. You just need to really hope that whatever story they come up with for season 6, it is somehow at least a little interesting for people to still hang on. I really don't see Fear the Walking Dead because it's weighing down the franchise itself. Forget making money or the little bit it does. It is weighing down the franchise itself. So they're just not a right fit unless they can do some replacements here, which again, that will not go over well because it's like admitting, oh shit, you know what I mean? We screwed up and we put people in this position that really wasn't a good fit. Now, to the repetition, after a few years, again, I think this is something that's being done on purpose. And I think it's the balance between not having enough faith in their own abilities to write something that is new and fresh and new and different for the viewer base, so they continue to rely on what's been done before and what has the audience reacted well with before. Let's do something similar but put a different spin on it. And then the first problem I mentioned is the cheap tricks. Now, this is something that I'm going to hold against the showrunners, but also Scott Gimple as the chief content officer for the whole franchise, because this is not right. You don't do this to fans, and this isn't like fan entitlement. Like Last of Us is coming out in February, but I'm like, boo-hoo, I want it at the end of this year. I want it in October. Or they're not coming out with multiplayer yet, so I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, that's not good enough. Come out with multiplayer with the game. Rush it if you have to, as ridiculous as that sounds. I've heard people say that, but you know, when you get around the multiplayer, that's fan entitlement. When you do boo-hoo-hoo. When it comes to what fans deserve, and deserve is the wrong word, because if they don't get it, they're out, and then you failed because they're not going to follow what you're putting out. So at the end of the day, if you continue pulling these cheap trick, no substance bullshit moves like the helicopter, the connection to the Rick movies that go absolutely nowhere, even if they do a complete reversal or a complete 180, and they have the girl from that Isabella girl, is that her name? They have her meet up with Al, and there's more stuff going on there. Why even bother? What was even the point of putting them in Fear the Walking Dead? You know what the point was? It was to cheat fans and say, look, we have something of substance to make this world feel a little smaller, a little tighter, and to give it some connective tissue, but it's really nothing. They have the Morgan crossover, and guess what? It really means nothing. They have Dwight coming, but guess what? It means nothing. There's no substance here for these characters. It's just a ploy. It's all a cheap trick to get you to tune in, to get you to watch and to support it. And that's all it is. And that's what they've been doing constantly with Fear. Cheap trick after repetitive story, after not right fit type episodes. And with season 5, I think season 4 and 5, I think that is a clear testament to how they don't care about telling a story that has some substance, a story that's interesting in this universe. All they want is for you to just shut up and watch, like the good little idiots you are. Just shut up, watch. Look at this. We got something connected to the Rick movie, you fucking retard. Go ahead and watch this show. You moron, idiot, you know, what's a good thing? You blind fan, just watch. You'll feed every, shitty piece of dialogue, every stupid camera angle we want to feed to you. You'll lap it up because you're just a fanboy / fangirl. Come and get it because you're a loser. They don't respect you, so why should you respect them? I don't care how good the trailer is. If these showrunners are on it, if there's any hints of some bullshit, cheap trick tactics, I won't even give the first episode a shot. And I don't think any of you should either. Again, unless you were over the moon in love with it, keep watching it then. I'm not going to tell you to stop if you legitimately like it. But if you're on the fence and I hear so many people like, I don't know why I watch this show. Now's the time to stop. Put your thoughts and opinions in the comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn.